Hello and welcome to the Profitable Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and as the founder of the Bold Life Movement and a fellow coach for more than 7 years, I know the challenges that many of you face when launching or growing your coaching business. And I'm here to pull back the curtain on the coaching industry and help you overcome roadblocks to make the impact you were born to make. Each week, I'll be interviewing successful coaches from every corner of the industry to share exactly how they have managed to generate massive impact and income. From strategy to psychology, we cover it all. This show is presented to you by Transformation Academy, a global marketplace of courses and coaching certifications. So whether you are already part of our epic community or you're brand new to this show, if you're ready to learn what it takes to turn your passion for service into a profitable business, then keep listening. You are in the right place. Hello and welcome back to the Profitable Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and this is episode 16 with Jolie Dawn. Jolie is the queen of prosperity queendom, the creator of Creatrix Calling, and the visionary behind the Dare to Prosper annual challenge. And I invited Jolie onto today's episode because I have watched her consistently grow her coaching business over the years with grace, with authenticity, with femininity, and I thought she had a really unique story to share with you as she's been able to create a really luxurious and freedom-based lifestyle business around the premise of serving. And she's one of the best people that I know at walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And so today I wanted to share with you some of Jolie's top tips for knowing how to consistently call in a prosperous coaching year, knowing how to hire and when to do so, knowing how to move through the ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship and really lean into what are the things that you desire most and how can you let fear be your compass. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and welcome the beautiful, the one and only Jolie Dawn. Hello, welcome back to the Profitable Coach Podcast. I'm so grateful today to have the beautiful Jolie Dawn joining me. Jolie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kimberly. So lovely to be here.
Yeah, so Jolie was one of the very first people that I actually thought about when we were launching the Profitable Coach because I've been following your journey both personally and as a fellow coach for 7 years now. I think we first met in Austin in like 2016 or 15. It's been a long time. So I'm really, really intrigued by the way that you've been able to very authentically and almost organically grow a multi-million-dollar business. Is that accurate?
A high six figure, almost the 1 million mark.
High six-figure business.
Yeah.
And so will you take me back to like the early days? What was the genesis of you deciding that coaching was something you wanted to do? And what were some of like the first steps that you took?
Genesis. So we have to go back to age 20. I had a major life-altering event happen in my life that forever shifted who I was as a being and shifted my perception of life. And that was during the 2008 economic collapse, my family taking a really big financial hit and a lot of chaos, a lot of drama, and the whole saga ending in my dad's decision to take his life. So at 20, I was so wrecked as a being. I was feeling like the stigma of being a daughter of a suicidal parent, a parent that committed suicide, and then also inheriting a caretaking role for my mother, who was really sick physically, mentally, emotionally, and was really incredibly traumatized by the whole situation of losing her husband. And at 21, I'm so grateful to have found my spiritual awakening journey very young. The right books found me and the leadership courses. And I was in a relationship where we had our awakening together. And I felt this deal with life. I saw how precious life was. And I felt very real and up close how easy, like how fragile the experience of life is. And I, immediately after my dad's passing, went down a path of like really drinking heavily, really losing myself, not making good choices for my body. And I could see the path of recreating the family lineage and the family drama. And then I could see a path of awakening. And I made a deal with God that I would honor the preciousness of life and I would find my life precious, and I would discover my gifts, and I would discover my purpose, and I would make the most out of the very short time that I had here on the planet. And that brought me to such a journey of feeling my wholeness for the first time ever in my life. And when I felt that wholeness and I felt that freedom and I felt that possibility, I couldn't help but want to give it back. And I did back in the day, I did a lot of landmark trainings. I don't know if you were in the landmark world. You were? Okay. Why did I know that?
I was in the Tony world, so there was a lot of overlap, the Tony Robbins world and the landmark world.
Okay. So there was a course where you do like a community project where you give to the community. And I was like, I could launch a coaching business out of this. So I was 23 and I launched my first ever give to the community, which was a free women's event called Inner Goddess Unleashed Summit. And I just wanted to bring women together and talk about living life intentionally and living life with purpose and meaning. And that ended up launching my coaching business. I ended up doing lots of summits and gatherings for women in San Diego. And from there, I wrote my books and started to grow my coaching programs. But it came from this desire to want to give all of the lessons and the wisdom that life was giving me, to give that back. I feel like that's where a lot of coaches begin, is like, oh, I went through this relationship breakup. I went through this reclamation of my power through finances, and I've learned something through that wisdom, and I want to give that wisdom. And that was exactly what I was feeling in my early 20s. I wanted to give this to others.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to call out that you just shared is, this moment in time that was excruciating and painful and in some ways destructive with the habits that you were choosing into, but ultimately led you down a path of service. And I think that what a lot of new coaches sometimes forget is the thing that is motivating you to want to give, to want to share and serve and prevent others from having experienced what you did, is sometimes the very thing that keeps us from sharing it all because we have shame about it. And so we can lean into your message is your message. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before, and really get back to what our why is. I think that is one of the most powerful driving forces in continuing down the entrepreneurial journey, which sometimes is not that easy.
After this happened with my dad, I was like, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of my life covering up what had happened in my family secrets. And I never thought that this would be the thing that I write about in my book and the thing that I talk about. And the thing that shaped my character so deeply is my willingness to release the shame that I felt and the embarrassment and the hurt and the anger and the collapse that I was in, and actually make it my motivation. And I think Tony says this beautifully, post-traumatic growth. So post-traumatic stress. I turned that into a really big soul growth moment.
So I'm curious, how did the evolution from this is something that I want to hide to this is something that I'm willing to share to this is something that I must share and it's part of my message, how did that look? Because I'm currently like moving through something. I'm like, this is 1,000,000% part of the story. It will be written about. It's integral and it's necessary, but I'm not on the other side of it yet. So I'm really curious if you can walk me through the evolution for you.
I had a really incredible healer. It's probably 23, right around when all the kind of giving back stuff happened. And then she did family constellation work. Are you familiar with family constellation work?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But will you explain it for people who are listening that aren't?
So you essentially get to play out the roles in the family dynamic within your family unit with the other participants in the room. So this is mom, this is brother, this is dad, this is auntie, this is kind of the constellation that I grew up in. And you get to have a profound therapeutic healing experience with replaying the dynamics. And this woman was a master, a psychic channel. She was something else. Her name is Saima. She has a global following. And I did this journey of profound healing with her. And what it showed me was how I was just had this really broken inner child and playing out these wounds, a lot of inadequacy stuff, a lot of running from my power and playing in this sense of smallness. And so through that healing and through that family constellation work, I feel like I finally got to integrate and see myself as a whole healed person. and come out on the other side really inspired to create something instead of being scared of my own power.
Wow. Was it really a moment in time?
I can trace it back to that being the work that really shifted me, because it
Wow.
was like my inner child got free and she got listened to and understood for the first time.
Mm. And one of the things that I'm hearing you say is you doing your own work was
Mm.
necessary for you to be able to help others through theirs.
Exactly.
Like
You know,
coaches need support systems just as much, if not more, than their clients.
oh yeah. My second book I wrote was called The Spiritual Journey of Entrepreneurship. And I really kind of tracked in myself and in other prolific entrepreneurs, the awakening journey and the healing journey that entrepreneurship is, because it will show you so many of your limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And most people aren't brave enough to traverse that, but not these listeners and not you. We're the brave ones. I've said, I will dive into myself. I will discover my own character. I will heal these wounds. I will feel my sense of enoughness, and I will operate from that place so that I can attract the business that I desire.
Are you willing to share some of the limiting beliefs that you had when you were starting out that you've been able to transmute now and use as like power?
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple. So I grew up in a family dynamic where both of my parents liked to gamble. And we lived
Mm.
in the inland kind of desert area outside in the outskirts of San Diego, where there was a huge Vegas-like casino in the middle of nowhere because it was an Indian reservation. So oftentimes I grew up with my family, my mom and my dad being gone a lot gambling. And both of them had very like addictive tendencies. So it was combined with like drinking, it was combined with social. It was like where their friend circle was. And they had like status at the casinos. They were getting like free meals and wined and dined and then hotel rooms. It was just like a huge part of their life.
Yeah.
And it also created so much financial instability because it's not designed for you to come up financially. It's meant to be a thrill, and sometimes you win, but most of the time you don't.
Yeah.
So I grew up in this just feast and famine and never knowing if we were like middle class or lower middle class or upper middle class. Like it was just so much uncertainty. But also, I spent a lot of my childhood alone and not getting picked
Mm.
up from school and being forgotten about. So I just had this huge wound around I'm not important.
Mm.
Nobody will listen to me. Nobody understands my needs. And I'm not special and I'm not chosen. And that I'm not chosen further got solidified after my dad's death, because I'm like, obviously, if I was chosen, he would stay on the planet. It was like such a heartbreak to feel him gone and the responsibility that I got to carry at 20 years old without him on the planet. So, of course, then fast forwarding to my early 20s, and I'm building my coaching business. And I have this huge story about how I can't take up space. Nobody wants me anyway, inadequacy wounds, not enoughness wounds. And I would just go down the comparison rabbit hole. Like the first time I saw Amanda Francis, I was like, why am I even trying? This girl is prettier than me, skinnier than me, smarter than me. She has more education than me, and she's further along than me. And she's doing everything that I want to do. So like, why would I even try? And just got really triggered in comparison to other people, and really triggered because I just felt like I didn't have it in me.
Yeah.
And some of the most important work I did to be able to then have a six-figure business in my mid-20s was excavating these inner child wounds and starting to see a bigger vision of myself instead of the wounded little girl that wished her parents were home instead of at the casino.
And so my experience of you and what you've created over the years is that you've always been brave and visible and authentic online. Like I remember you growing your following pretty organically early on, and so help me connect the dots between this poor little girl who doesn't want to be seen or take up space or thinks she deserves to be seen to this powerhouse woman that I remember seeing online. Was it a matter of faking it till you make it?
Oh, some of that, some of the like projecting, if I were this confident and bright, who would I be? But it's so a function of my willingness and my braveness to meet my shadows and meet the
Mm.
really painful stories of my own limiting beliefs. And I got obsessed with doing that because I felt how free I was. I would start meditating, and I would have more mental bandwidth, and I would do energy healing, and I would see more of my blocks. And so I traveled the shadow work realm with a fuck ton of bravery and with commitment and with focus, because I knew that my spirit was waiting for me. And because I think I had seen the preciousness of life, and I had seen that it's short and it's fleeting. And I've seen this lineage that I grew up in around so much scarcity and taking dreams to the grave. And it just really affected me, of just like, I'm going to play full out, and I can't play full out and know what my soul's potential is if I'm attached to these stories of my past. And I'm on the process now. I'm still finding stories of my wounded inner little girl. I'm still doing this healing work. I'm still doing energy. I think it's a lifelong path that I'm committed to. But yeah, absolutely. I found my path to self-expression and vulnerability and being seen because I felt the desire to be seen, because that was my true nature that was just covered up by old wounding.
Yeah, 100%. One of the things that you've done very successfully over the years is work with other women to create an offering for the world. And I would love for you to explain why this approach is something that you keep going back to, and how people listening can implement something like it. I'm talking about your books.
The books and the Dare to Prosper Challenge.
Exactly.
So I'll start with the Dare to Prosper Challenge, and then I'll talk about the model for the book. So I got introduced to this concept, which I call now audience pooling in the affiliate traffic world, many, probably about 10 years ago. And what happened in 2019, I really changed the course of my business when I launched an online challenge called the Dare to Prosper Challenge. And I had these tools of hypnosis and going into the psychic field and doing deep, profound healing on the psyche and the emotional body and the energetic body, using the tools of hypnosis and energy healing. And I wanted this work to go far and wide. And so I partnered with 10 women in the industry who had built their communities and their audiences. I did the Dare to Prosper Challenge one day, 10 days in a row, every day for 10 days. And then I had a speaker in the afternoon. And I saw the power of growing my first ever Dare to Prosper Challenge to 550 participants with no paid traffic and like a modest sized community. And that was all on like partnering with people who believed in my work and believed in me and was willing to share my work with their audiences. And fast forward to today, we've completed 5 rounds of the Dare to Prosper Challenge. We're about to go to our 6th, and 10,000 people have gone through this challenge from 30 countries around the world. And that's on no paid traffic. And yeah, a modest email list and a modest Instagram following, and just partnering with people in the industry that were willing to share, that really believed in the work. So I'm a huge believer in collaborations, which I know you do here in the podcast and you do in your own work. Yeah. And then we did it with our books as well. So we'd create a book. I have 8 books in this series. I've got 4 from the Empowered Woman series. I got the Spiritual Journey of Entrepreneurship, and then 3 books in the Dare to Express series. And every person gets to write a chapter, and we all come together for the book launch, and we all promo it together.
Help me understand what the series aspect adds to the overall success of the book, and then also to the value add for the women involved.
So the series is about creating a concept for what message we want to bring across and what is kind of the essence of the book, and then creating multiple versions with different cohorts. So the people who are the authors get to be a part of an already brand recognized series. We already have the reviews on Amazon. We've already hit the top of our categories in Amazon, and they're coming into like an already existing brand.
Love that. And was this something that you learned from a coach, or did you just have this idea back in the day?
I had this idea first in 2017. Yeah. I
remember you doing it like pretty early on.
Yeah. I think I'd seen it around before, and then I was like, I want to do that. And I could do that. Yeah. But I didn't have anyone guide me the process. I kind of just made it up.
Okay, so how did you figure it out? I think this is something that I witness a lot of our new coaches in our group programs at Transformation Academy not necessarily have the like grit and the I just got to figure it out kind of energy that is required. And so I'm curious how you were constantly cultivating that and figuring out when you didn't have a model laid out before you.
Question. So I'll go back to the first collaboration book I ever did, which was The Spiritual Journey of Entrepreneurship. And I just felt so alive with the message and the mission. It's like, I want to interview entrepreneurs that have a story about the profound spiritual awakening and the mirror of entrepreneurship and how much they've grown as a person and grown their character while being on the path of entrepreneurship, from losing millions of dollars to creating $1 billion company, and just like really fascinating stories. And I was living in Encinitas at the time, and I was connected with a lot of incredible entrepreneurs. Yeah. And so I just led with that desire. And I had already launched my own book. I'd already launched Empowered, Sexy, and Free and did a really great self-published launch and hit the top of the charts on Amazon. And because I'd been through the process before and figured out how to do it by myself, I was like, I could do it with just multiple chapters, which is actually easy because you're not writing the whole book yourself. So yeah, I would say that there's this energy within me of tenacity when I feel really connected to the purpose of a project, and I don't let the small details stop me from achieving the ending. And also, as soon as I got other people involved and I promised a launch timeline, I felt really committed to that launch timeline.
Yeah. And so getting excited about what you're doing is what I'm hearing is really integral to the success of what you're doing. And so for anyone who's listening that doesn't have that same fervor around what it is that they want to create, I would invite them to really get clear on what the vision is that excites you. Because if it doesn't, it's going to be hard to show up on the days that you don't feel like it, or show up when you don't really know the next clear step.
Yeah. I know I'm surrounded by people that have the heart of the coach, that want to help other people and that have a mission. And it's easy to have that in the beginning and then have those roadblocks that set you back. Like an author drops out, or you thought your client was a yes and then become a no. And that inner character of tenacity, of nothing will stop me. And if this launch isn't going the way that I want it to, or I'm not closing enough clients, it's an opportunity to look deep within myself and be on the healing path while I'm growing my business, because that was a direct correlation for me. The more healing work I did to be in connection with my own sense of power was a direct correlation to my success in business. I don't know any other way to teach people to be successful other than to continue to do the deep healing work so that you can be the essence of the divine that you came here to be.
I love that. One of the things that you mentioned was, at the time you were living in Encinitas, you were surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs. And so I've known you to be both rooted, whether it was Encinitas or Austin, and also nomadic. So will you speak to the pros and cons of both and why you're currently choosing to have a home base in Austin?
I have gotten rid of all of my material possessions and like sold my car and started over in the nomadic journey twice. And it has been the most freeing, liberating, scary, terrifying experience all combined into one. So I had been curious about it when I first moved to Austin. So I first moved to Austin in 2016, and I was so expanded by like being in a new community that I'm like, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep growing myself as a being. And like next I want to go to Nashville, and then I want to go to Bali, and I just want to keep expanding in community. And I got sucked in by Austin, and then left in 2019 and went to go live in LA and Santa Monica and grow my team and kind of be in more of a creative pulse. And then COVID went down, and I was living in this 3-story house, this glass house near the beach in Santa Monica, paying exorbitant rent. My whole house was decked out like a Pinterest board. Like the whole house was a film studio. And
I remember it.
It was a beautiful home.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the beach one day, and they chain link fenced off the beach for COVID. And I was like, oh, my life is about to change drastically because I'm not paying Santa Monica rent to not have access to the beach. And I just looked at everything I'd been accumulating. I think because I had come from so little as a child, and I always wanted more material things. Like I wanted our house to be newer, and I wanted newer carpet. Like we had this like dated 1970s house, and like the internet never worked. And it seems like things were just like broken all the time, and nothing I had was new. Often shopped at either thrift stores or like Marshall's discount things. And I just always wanted really nice things, and I wanted beautiful things, and I wanted new
Yeah.
things. And I like reached that in my career. I was able to buy myself those things and like upgrade my laptop every 2 years and make sure I had the newest phone, and like everything was working. And I got to finally provide those material possessions. And when I was at the pinnacle of it with my material possessions is when I felt the most trapped by it. I was like, I
Mm.
actually don't care about all these clothes in my closet. I actually don't care about this whole collection of material possessions that I have. And so I gifted my entire house of belongings. I gifted my white Italian velvet furniture. I gifted my entire book collection, my crystal collection, my costume collection, my coat collection, like every collection of items that I had. I have a few parties in LA where my friends just came over and took everything, and then the rest went to Goodwill. And I had a friend moving at the time, and I gave her all of my furniture, and I left LA with 2 suitcases and went nomadic. And it was right when COVID was going down, and I had this fear of like, did I just get rid of like just such an expensive tens of thousands of dollars worth of things at a time when there's financial insecurity? And what I did for myself at that time is I went to go live in Mexico, and I lived in Tulum in the early COVID days. And that was the best thing I could have done for my prosperity and my mindset, because I was never really triggered about COVID. I'm like, I'm a young, healthy being. I don't have elderly parents. Both of my parents had passed at that time. And if COVID is the thing that wipes me off planet Earth, I will have said that I lived a good life, but like I know for sure I'm not going to live in fear of getting COVID. And so I got to go live in a community of kind of these like rebel outlaws who weren't playing the COVID game.
My people.
And that's right. We were out there dancing in the jungle, swimming in the pools, eating bomb food. And Mexico, I'm just like so grateful to them as the hospitable neighbors that they've been to us, because they were like, we'll play a different game. And Mexico was the only country in the entire world that was accepting tourism without a COVID test or a vaccine card.
I lived
So,
there during COVID.
oh my gosh.
I was in
Amazing.
Baja. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. It was a perfect
Yeah.
place to be. It was like life is normal. And what I was able to do because I was nomadic, light on my feet, living in Mexico, is I got free from the psychic space, because the psychic space during that time, especially in LA and many places, was so dense with scarcity, so dense with triggers and our lack of freedom. And there was such a war and a battle going on in the collective field. And I just exited stage left. And I said, if I'm going to be a leader at this time, I have to keep my mind clear. My freedom is not up for negotiation. Nobody gets to take a vote on whether I'm a free sovereign being or not, period, full stop. And if I'm going to be a leader in prosperity, I can't be sitting here and be triggered in this scarcity conversation and people fighting over toilet paper and people just reaming each other on social media. I feel like that's when social media got particularly toxic, of like us versus them on every single issue. If you were like going to Thanksgiving with your family, you were demonized. And so being nomadic was the biggest trust fall. And if you really knew me, you would know how absolutely particular I am about my material possessions, my little collections of things, and how I like my things and how I want my shoes to match the perfect outfit. And getting rid of that and being like, I'm better off without it was a huge, it was like humbling at the deepest level of like, the only jewelry I had is the little pouch that I had in my suitcase. And the only Lululemon leggings I had were the 3 that I brought, not the 15 that were in my closet. And I just pared everything down to the essentials. And also, being nomadic is hard. I was in Mexico with unstable internet, and I felt ungrounded a lot of the time. And so there's a huge cost in it, but the benefits are really incredible. And I learned so much about myself.
Yeah, I think that one of the really paradoxical things about being nomadic, because for those of you listening who don't know me personally, that's been my MO a lot, especially during COVID and especially this past year. I've moved from a lot of different communities. And the paradox is escaping the scarcity mindset set you free, allowed you to call in more prosperity, and it's a very real check on your nervous system in terms of feeling safe, feeling like you have control, feeling like you are capable of executing the business that you know is possible, that you know you're called here to execute. And so from a pragmatic standpoint, how did you navigate that? How did you show up in your power when you literally might be without electrical power? You
Mhm.
know?
Well, I just followed my joy. You know, the sense of freedom that I had when I left LA, I was so excited to get out of that field. The field of being in LA in the early COVID days was so intense. And then we had
Yeah.
the riots. We had the George Floyd riots, and there was like a car on fire outside of my front door. And it was just like, I felt with so much certainty that I wasn't going to be able to be a leader in this time unless I freed myself.
Mm.
So, from the practical level of the challenges that I met, from a sensitive projector being that needs her home to feel really grounded, I put myself in this situation of being uncomfortable that actually provided more comfort at the time because the people that I was meeting in Tulum, oh my gosh, I was just so nourished and I needed to be around that belonging. You know, I was single, I wasn't in a relationship, so I wasn't like just kind of hunkered down with my boo watching
Yeah.
extra Netflix and getting through it with somebody. So from a practical front, I would say if somebody's considering the nomadic life, I would ask why, because you can have a very rude awakening once you're on your first trip of just like, wait, why am I doing this? There has to be a reason. And um and from the practical sense, just making sure that you're staying in one place long enough to get grounded and that you have those few things in your suitcase that do make you feel like at home and that you just fight for your internet signal with everything that you got and pray to the internet gods that you can work abroad.
Yeah. So two things that I want to call out that you just shared. One is you escaped the COVID mindset, the scarcity mindset. And that's the particular example that we're talking about here. But that applies to so many areas of life that people might be using as an excuse to not move forward. My spouse, my family, my religion, my local community, all these people don't get it. They don't support me. They think I'm crazy. And the reality is, especially when we think of COVID, like it was so divisive. And yet, when it's worth it, you just listen to your own inner voice. COVID and some of the decisions that I made during that time literally split me off from my family. They didn't talk to me for months. They wouldn't see me for months. And yet I knew in the moment that I made the decision that was the catalyst to all that, my own intuition is what I have to follow. And so whether that's for a business or for something else, I just think that I want to call out the importance of trusting our own intuition and
Mm.
knowing that it's going to lead us to good places eventually.
Mm, so good because there's always going to be external forces that have an interest in controlling us, you know?
Yeah.
And whether that's intentional or unintentional, whether that's the family system we're in or the religious institution we're in or the culture that we're in, it can be really overt and clear or really subtle. And in
Mhm.
what ways am I compromising my values and my truth in order to fit in the name of belonging, in the name of security? When if I freed myself and did the hard, scary thing, I would get to trust that the net would appear. And, you know, when COVID went down, Kimberly, I was so triggered. I was so scared and so triggered. And because I saw on Facebook, a recession is going to follow. And the word recession was so deeply triggering in my system because in the last recession in 2008, my whole world blew over into a dark nightmare and it didn't let up. You know, I inherited a
Mm.
caretaking role of my mom. She stayed alive for 9 more years, but kind of just barely.
Mm.
And I was so scared. Like my body just reacted of like, someone's going to die. The world is going to end. We're all not okay. I've had this good run in business. This is going to be the end of me. Like I just went and catastrophized it so big. And then I caught myself. I'm like,
Mm.
what good am I going to be? And I was already running the Dare to Prosper Challenge at this point. So I was already being a stand as a brand for prosperity and living the prosperity codes and freeing myself and continuing to do my inner work. And I just said, what use am I going to be as a leader if I'm triggered in scarcity and playing into this collective belief system of not enoughness and loss of power and loss of freedom? Like, what other game is there for me to play? And the listeners, you may be playing, there may be a different beast you have to confront. There could be programming around staying in a job that you don't like or not setting healthy boundaries in your family. And I think it takes a really brave part of yourself to listen to what your spirit is trying to communicate. And especially on those sleepless nights or those anxious days, like, what is my body trying to tell me? Is there another way to do this? And am I being called forth to a brave part of myself to express myself in my unique way, in a way that feels true for me, that may not fit in with everybody else?
Yeah, and I would venture to say that anyone who's ever been a leader in their industry or has been successful in their industry at all, it's because they were willing to do things differently. They had to harness that somewhat rebellious, somewhat audacious part of their personality. And for those of you listening, it might mean unfollowing all the people that you follow. It might mean turning off the news. It might mean having one call a month with your family instead of four, because you really need to be like the guardian of your mind so that you can have the energy and the connectedness to move forward with your dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had chills, that story. There's so many times you shared something today, I've had chills. One of the things that I have looked up to you for years is your capacity to run a business while super staying in your feminine. And I would love for you to share with the audience how you do that. How do you be a boss babe, but still so feminine?
Thank you, Kimberly. That's such a sweet reflection, because it is something that I've consciously created for myself and really fought for. And it's something that I've lost before in business and didn't like my experience of life. And at my core essence, I am a really feminine being, and I'm a sensual being. I love being in my senses. I love beautiful things. I love free time so much. Like the joy that I get when I look at my calendar and I see 3 to 4 days with nothing on it. I'm like, oh, I'm alive. What are we going to create life? And I have a big social life and I love my friends. And so over the years, I have developed an incredibly strong relationship to my male energy, my masculine energy, my ability to produce, run a high 6-figure business, run a team, stay structured, have the yearly plans. I have the next 2 years of my business already completely mapped out. 2024 is already completely done, itemized week by week, and we already have the books for 2025. So I have a lot of masculine structure. I also astrologically have 5 planets in Earth. So I'm very much an Earth energy being and operate with the Earth and like very grounded in that way, even though I am a air sign, I'm a Gemini. But I'm also a projector in human design. Do you know any projector friends?
I love my projector friends. I have such a soft spot for my projectors who just need to be asked and invited for their wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. And it's said that projectors have 1 motors and generators and mani-gens have multiple motors. And I really feel that. Like I run out of energy when it comes to creation and I really need to be refueled. So at the essence of my being, I feel like when I'm being truest to myself, it's when I do have free time. I'm nurturing my feminine being. I've felt times in business where I was just like dry and crusty and bitter and being like, I'm overworked. I don't like this. Like there's too much. And in those years that I was scaling, like COVID was a 2.5x increase for us in 2021. Wow. From 2020 to 2021, we 2.5x the business. We went from like 250,000 in revenue to 750. And during that time, I remember being like, many moments being like, I have more money in the bank and it's not worth it to me. This is actually not worth it. Really genuinely being in the bath saying that to myself, like, I don't find this to be valuable. I don't find the more money versus my energy. And I just had such a huge growth spurt. My spirit was trying to catch up to the demand. And we had been at the right place at the right time for that big leap. And our programs just exploded. And I will say that now I am in awe of how much I'm able to utilize the brilliance of leveraging my time. I'm only on the computer 2 to 3 days a week. I am never on the computer Monday and I'm never on the computer Friday. I mean, I guess there are some exceptions to that, like the Dare to Prosper challenge, or like if I had to like send an audio to the team, but there are no meetings, there are no clients. So every week I have a 4-day weekend, which is the best. which is the absolute best. And I love it. And it's so nourishing to my spirit. For years and years and years, I had team meeting first thing on Monday morning. And I was like, why can't it be on Tuesday? Why do we have to be Monday morning? Like, I actually want a much slower Monday because
Yeah.
the collective field is already geared up for Monday and we're drinking our caffeine and we're going to work. We're like already on that zone. And I'm like, I go to yoga on Monday morning and I make myself eggs and a great smoothie. And I tend to my house and yeah. And in order to do that, I've had to learn skills. I've had to be very efficient with support and team. I have the most incredible team and everybody knows their roles and everybody knows what their deliverables are. And for all of my programs, I have a support coach, like a course supervisor who answers all of the questions and does a lot of the coaching. So that, like, my current course that I'm in, I coach twice a month. And then I pop back in when I'm needed. But a lot of the responsibility of the day-to-day and the things that used to pull on my energy, I've outsourced to her, and she's phenomenal and even better qualified than me because she's more in connection with like the, front lines, the beginner strategies, and she's incredible. And my students really trust and love her and have a personal relationship with her. So it was team, it was support, and it was an unwillingness to back down from my desires and how I wanted my life to look, because no one else is going to come and be like, did you take a week vacation this year as the CEO? Did you make sure that you have a week off or 2 weeks off or 4 weeks off? And I realized after many years of running my business and never being like, I have a full week off where nobody needs me. Like, it took me a lot longer to realize that like I have to be the advocate for my vacation time. So I reemerged inspired.
Yeah, I really want to, well, first, I can feel the spaciousness of your Monday, and it's so nourishing. And as someone who likes a very long morning practice and does not like to have a lot of obligations or like things I need to be doing on the calendar, I just like, I lean into this. It's very inspiring for me. And so on that note, I want to talk about team. How did you not just find the right people, but create the culture that the right people know what to do and you're not micromanaging them?
I will start with the mission of Prosperity Queendom Inc., my company, is very clear. And we're a business that's really doing what we say that we're going to do. And we have high client results. And there's a life and an energy around the queendom that attracts people that want to be a part of an energy like that, because not everybody wants to be the CEO. Not everybody wants to run the whole show. They want to be a part of a really rad organization. So I would just say, first and foremost, know what the mission of your company is and why would somebody want to be a part of that? Because that's really the essence of motivation. People are really clear about how they're making an impact. They feel a part of that impact. It hits their heart and their own personal mission. And I've kept my team around for many, many years. Audrey has been with me since 2019, and Regina has been with me since 2021. So between like 3 and 4 years. And I run a pretty lean team. So I have like a project manager OBM, I have an admin VA, and I have a course supervisor. So 3 key roles. And then I do contract work with like designers and photographers and copywriters, copywriting, design. Yeah. So I will say that this has been the biggest area of growth for me, because these managerial skills, I never had a corporate job. So I didn't have this like process around how the teams work and how people stay motivated and how they report. And it's something that I've had to learn and get good at over the years. But I will say that the biggest mistake people make is they wait too long to get support and think that they're just like this solopreneur. I'm a coach. I don't need somebody. And as soon as you can start delegating the tasks that don't need your attention, I mean, almost every part of my role is outsourceable. The coaching is outsourceable. The the implementation is outsourceable. The one thing that is not ever outsourceable is the vision of the company. And we need a strong leader to hold that vision that magnetizes good talent and good people. And I've also been willing to compensate people really well and build performances and bonuses and have people really feel like they're a part of the success of the company.
I love that. And so for people that are listening who haven't really gotten to that place where they're dreaming about being the business owner and they're still the solopreneur coach, help me understand how you made that leap. Because when you first started out, you were coaching. It was a one-on-one thing, right? So
Really?
what was the shift? What was the evolution like?
Yeah, it was when I moved to Austin and I wanted to scale. My first ever assistant was Ash Samita. You remember Ash?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And I remember her, she has a very unique role because she was a matchmaker for assistants with other CEOs, and she helped onboard and train the assistants. So she started educating me on what an assistant can do. So we sat down to coffee. So maybe someone who's getting started would need somebody with assistant experience, so you can actually just like see a world into it. She's like, well, first and foremost, let me start doing all of your bookings. Like, no more manual bookings. I'm going to have access to your calendar. I see that you're in yoga at Wednesdays at 9 a.m. You should get back. And she started like studying my life through my calendar. And that was a huge breakthrough. I was like, oh, someone else is going to manage this for me. And that's even possible. It seemed like an impossible task to outsource because I was like, how will anybody ever know how I like my calendar done? So that's the first thing she took off my plate, was doing all of my bookings and like getting me on Calendly and like designing my life. And I remember the first time her being like, we need a meeting. I see that you're available Tuesday at 2. Does that work for you? And I'm like, oh, this is so efficient. Like, my assistant has my calendar. So she was kind of training me as we went to take some tasks off my plate. And then she would do things like, I had to have speaking engagements in Austin, and she would come with me and kind of like speak on my behalf, or if people had questions about my coaching, and just kind of be there with me and supporting me. And then she taught me some project management things, and we upgraded my courses, and she just helped in the enrollment. So she was kind of teaching me that this grip on the tasks that I could release and actually feel really supported.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was one of your Austin events at this like tall apartment building where I met her. We were doing some sort of, was it even a workshop or was it a filming of what was going to be? I don't remember, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yes. We were filming at the Catherine.
Yeah, the Catherine. Very fancy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you got
It
to
was
see
fun.
live in action. That's so awesome.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, it feels so long ago. But what I love is the admission that you did not know even how to hire an assistant, right? There's so many people listening to this who are like, I'd love to have things off my plate, but I don't even know what to give them. Go find yourself a company that literally does this for a living. There are so many virtual assistant companies that will match make you, and they'll tell you, here are the things that you should probably give your assistant.
Mm-hmm. I'm also a really huge fan of Philippines talent, like really, really into it. There's so much talent in the Philippines or other international companies, but go on Upwork.com and find somebody with really high reviews around their VA work, and then ask them, like, what are some tasks that you've done in the past to alleviate a solopreneur and a business owner, and let them tell you what tasks they've done before. And, at this point, there's no way I could run the organization that I run without my team. It's just like humanly impossible for one person to manage everything. I would just be working I wouldn't have any sort of life between what Regine holds, she works full time, and what Audrey holds. It's what we're able to do together is beyond what one person could ever possibly do.
Yeah, one of the things I also really wanted to ask you about is you've always paid yourself. I feel like you had a really good understanding of bringing in the business money, paying Jolie, the CEO, and I'd love for you to just kind of like pull back the curtain on that a little bit for people who are just like, the money comes in, I put it towards the things.
Yes. Okay. So I do have some things to say about this. So I've been in business for 10 years. The first 3 years, I wasn't really getting paid. It was like a side thing. And pretty much all the revenue that I created just went back into the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt what that felt like energetically to not be paid. And I was doing so much work around relationship with money and money mindset that when I actually got a check from a client and it went into my bank account and I got to feel it, there was so much more energy I had to give to my business. So I was just like noticing and tracking in myself. When my business feels like this expensive hobby, I'm not motivated, but I get like a $6,000 check or a $15,000 check. And now my life is different because of it. Like I actually feel different. That's when I understood the importance of making sure that you get paid. And then I worked with a mentor that helped me do a very sophisticated building of the infrastructure of my business. And I pay myself a salary, and I haven't missed a salary payment in I think about 5 years. So I pay myself a salary through a payroll company of $10,000 a month. And then at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, I take an owner's draw. And that's how I've been able to build my real estate portfolio. And so I know with certainty that I'm getting paid $10,000 a month like a job. And I know that my job as the owner is to make sure that the revenue is hitting the business in such a consistent way that I don't even have to think around whether I'm able to take that much money out of the business or not, and whether the team is getting paid or not.
So you factor in your own salary as an expense for the business. As the business owner, it's just a line item. But then as Jolie receiving 10K, it's like, I can breathe.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Right. So I almost like wear different hats in different roles. So I get to relax like an employee would, of just knowing that with certainty I'm getting paid and that my mortgage is getting paid and my life is sustained. And then as the CEO business owner, I always keep my eye on the revenue to make sure we're not in a revenue crunch. So I've been able to prevent revenue crunches for the past 5 years.
And
I
what are
think
some steps that, oh, go ahead.
there's been maybe twice where I had to delay my payment, like a week or two, and just some exceptions, but generally no exceptions.
And I would love to know, what are some steps that you take proactively to ensure that you're not missing payroll for you or anyone else on your team?
So for the last 6 years, I've had the whole year of launches mapped out. So I don't do the like, let's see what I'm inspired to create, and then I'll just like do a launch and do a thing. It's very formulaic and it's very strategic. So I start the year with the Dare to Prosper challenge, then we move into Creatrix Calling, then we move into Academy, then we move into Queendom. I've been running that for 6 years. So it's not like, will my program sell out? It's, can we reach our personal best this year? So I'm definitely a marketer through and through. I get off on data and conversions. I get off on growing, and that's actually fun for me. I know what it feels like to be in the chase of like scaling for the sake of scaling, and I know what it feels like to be like curious about what our personal best is. And I will say that because it's very strategically mapped out, it takes out a lot of the guesswork. And we know with precision how the launches line up, how the payment plans line up, so that we're hitting our revenue goals every single month. Because, the company burns between $30,000 and $50,000 a month between payrolls and expenses. And so we have to be hitting high numbers to make all those things work.
Yeah. For the people listening who are going, how did you know how to do that? How did you determine what formula? How did you set up the launches? Do you have mentors? Do you have coaches, resources that you turn to for that kind of stuff?
So this is my zone of genius. This is like, this stuff comes really naturally to me. I'm a planner and I like to think ahead, and it's really simple. I literally Google list of all of the Mondays in 2024, and it gives me a list, and I put that into a Google sheet, and then I look at the whole year and we just map out the launches. It's really not even more sophisticated than that. But what I do have, and this is like what I teach and what I study and what I'm really good at, is I have a very precise product suite, moving from free to high ticket and even ultra high ticket. So I have a very clear customer journey, and I have products that naturally end up kind of moving into that upsell and like graduating people in their journey. But what I will say is how somebody can do this is just start to get into the mentality of big picture thinking and longer term thinking. Because in my beginning years, it was always just about like, what's the next launch and what's the next launch and how can I like close the next client? And it was very temporary minded. And when I started looking at my business from a 5-year view, I learned a very important character, which is delayed gratification, which I didn't understand for a lot of the time. All I wanted was to like go after a client, close that client, and feel the money in the bank. And then go after a client, close it, feel the money, chasing. And when I really started to restructure my business back in 2019, when I launched the Dare to Prosper Challenge, I saw how important it was to have a plan that you could stay consistent with over time. Like I have friends that come up to me at the internet marketing party or friends' birthdays, and they're like, haven't seen me in 5 years. They're like, what are you doing now, Jolie? I'm like, oh, the same thing, the same funnel. And you don't hear that very often.
Yeah.
You don't hear that very often because people want to like change their funnel, or there isn't a strategy that they're following. And I will say that I did the unsexy thing, which is built the infrastructure of my business so I could have the sexy life now. And a lot of people I've noticed aren't willing to do that, because I did a money mentorship class where we overhauled the back end of our business books, and it was so treacherous, so unsexy, so absolutely annoying. And I watched my classmates flail and I flailed. It was very advanced. It was with Christina Wise and her Curbs program. And it was like really intense and really triggering. But I was like, I'm going to do the thing now so people, when they ask me, how do you own 2 homes and have passive income from real estate? I'm like, 5 years ago, I set myself up by doing the hard thing. And I was thinking long-term, and I was thinking 5 years out, and all of a sudden 5 years comes, or the next year comes, or 2 years comes. And we tend to be in the more immediate gratification. I think, especially now when we're like training our brains with this like short form content and this scrolling, we have to be able to look at the business from a bigger picture if we want to be playing the long game.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, I feel like that's such a value bomb. I would love to link, what is Christina's program that you just mentioned? Carbs or something?
Yeah, the Curbs program is really good.
Okay.
I'm an affiliate for her program, so I can get you a special link too.
Oh, amazing. And then also you mentioned that you teach this. Like this is your bread and butter too, is coming up with your product suite. What is the best program or intro to you that people can get where they can start to like have a deeper understanding of this stuff?
My programs start at Creatrix Calling. And so it's about getting clear about what your offers are and getting clear about who you are as a brand. And then the graduates of Creatrix Calling are invited into my academy, where we spend 5 months working on your launch and building your product suite. So those 2 programs are where my clients are seeing the most results.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What is it that you wish you had known when you were first starting out that you know now?
I think back to that girl. She was so scared and so triggered. And she spent a lot of her time and energy worrying if it was going to work out for her. And I just remember being like, okay, I know that I can't do the 9-to-5 thing. I know that I need more meaning and purpose. And I also don't know if I'm going to be successful in this coaching stuff. And I don't know if I can be this person that I want to be. There was so much doubt, so much uncertainty. And if I could go back and talk to that girl, I would just be like, sweetheart, relax. You're burning a lot of energy creating a reality that you don't want. Let's use that energy to create the reality that you do want. And I just wish I could tell her that it's just so much bigger and beyond her wildest imagination, and to continue on the healing path, and she'll see a part of herself emerge that she doesn't even recognize. And I would say that to everybody listening, there's a version inside of you. There is a God power. There is a bigness. There is a potential inside of you that if you gave yourself full permission to explore and to live into and to self-express, you would be unrecognizable to yourself 5 to 10 years down the road. And that's where I'm at in this journey. I'm 10 years down the road now. And I was like, I didn't even think to think this big. It never crossed my mind to be like, could I take all this extra money from coaching and build a real estate portfolio in addition to living the cushiest life ever, where I don't have to give myself a budget on anything. I literally get to say yes to anything that I desire for myself, and I get to set up my future, and I get to live in this kind of abundance and spaciousness in a time when people are really, really having a hard time with money. Like, what a privilege that is. And that it's so worth all of the sleepless nights and the effort. kind of like having a newborn. Like you kind of forget the hard things and you just have the preciousness of your family and your baby. It's the same thing with entrepreneurship. Like I can remember the times when it was hard, but the most lasting feeling that I have is this business has provided me so much stability and groundedness no matter what was shifting in my life, breakups, health scares, losing and gaining weight, losing my mom, moving, all the instability in my life. My business has been so consistent because I've been so consistent with it, and it has given me more than I could ever have possibly imagined.
As you were describing that, I felt like I'm a very visual person. I just saw this like pillar of white light from like the earth up to the ethers, and just you in it, receiving constant, steady, never ending supply. Yeah.
I have so much gratitude. I really do. I'm so grateful to live this life and to be able to make up a career that was in exact alignment with my gifts and get paid whatever I desire. No income cap, no ladder that I have to create. And it's truly such a privilege. And it's amazing to be surrounded by you, Kimberly, who's walked that path too. And to all the listeners that are walking that path, just give yourself a ton of grace and notice if you are spinning out in lots of worry and mental confusion, and really save your energy for the creation.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Save your energy for the creation. Jolie, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. It's so nourishing to see your beautiful face and get to reconnect.
Thank you, Kimberly. Appreciate you.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you liked today's show, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button on your podcast app of choice, head over to theprofitablecoach.com/016 and check out all the resources that we're sharing from today's conversation. Jolie was dropping value bomb after value bomb, and we've got a couple different links in the show notes for you. If you're not already, check us out on social media. You can find me at The Kimberly Rich. And you can find Transformation Academy at Transformation Academy Online. Both of us on Instagram. We love getting messages from you guys. If you're looking for even more support, then head over to theprofitablecoach.com/freebie. That will give you access to our Life Coach Launch mini course, where you can learn the art of mastering client attraction. Again, I'm so grateful for all of you for listening to this show. We are over 7,000 downloads just in the first 16 episodes. So thank you for sharing this show with your friends. Thank you for tagging us on social media. Thank you for all of the positive reviews. I appreciate you all so much, and I will see you in next week's episode.